Good evening and welcome to Kunzang Pile Drilling. We're thrilled to have you join us tonight for another teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo. This teaching was given in 1991 and the title of it is Life is a Karmic Reflection. So prepare to see your life. We'll begin now.
I have to wonder if we get it when I hear people understanding the world as it appears, understanding the world situation. What we all talk about, and that's myself included, is we talk about what we see in the newspaper and what we hear on TV and our own assumptions about these things. And yet we do not really understand what precedes the kinds of situations that we find in the world today. Similarly, we do not understand what precedes our own personal difficulties. And we have a great gap or lack of understanding associated with that. According to the teaching, sentient beings have one thing in common. They try to be happy. Now, you know that's true about us. We try very hard to be happy. We act in such a way as to produce happiness, or what we think will produce happiness. We try to get people to love us. We try to be lovable and attractive. We dress for happiness. We go places to be happy. We engage in activities that we hope will make us happy. Throughout our whole lives, actually, there are really very few days when we don't engage in some kind of effortful event, if not many effortful events, all of which, if we boil them down, are about us and our trying to be happy. It's so interesting, isn't it? We're very busy. We're busy every day. We're busy working. We're busy playing. We're busy being with our family. We're just busy. We're just generally busy people. And for the most part, each of us tries very hard at what we do, whether it's work or going to school, whether it's being with our family or the duties associated with that, whether it's our own practice, whatever it is that we do, our social lives, all of these things that we do, we put a tremendous amount of effort into. And it's quite remarkable how we can fill up our days and our weeks and our years with this tremendous effortful push. And if we examine all of it, we find that it's about us trying to be happy. In our love relationships, we put a tremendous, extraordinary effort into our love relationships with our spouses, with our children, with our loved ones of all kinds. And these love relationships are effortful. They take a great deal of responsibility and cooperation from us. And we actually convince ourselves that we are in these relationships and that we are dealing with our family out of a sense of responsibility and compassion. But in fact, if we boil it down, we also find that even in our personal relationships, we're actually trying to be happy, and it's about us. And it's the very rare relationship that is geared toward being of benefit to others. It's most about us. So we spend all of our time trying to be happy. Well, this is true of all sentient beings, not only of humans. Certainly it's true of all the humans on the earth. And if we examine the lives of animals, each animal at every moment is busy doing something unless they're sleeping and resting. And when they're busy doing something, even if it's play or whether it's hunt or whether it's responding to the command of a human who is working them, whatever kind of animal they are, that animal in its way is trying to achieve happiness as it understands happiness. And of course, in the dullness of an animal's mind, it may be simply the alleviation of hunger, or it may be simply the escape of some dangerous, negative situation. But all sentient beings that we can see are apparently trying to be happy. Now, the Buddha teaches us that that's true of all sentient beings in all of the realms. But we also learn that we do not have the technique or the knowledge to make happiness. It's pretty hit and miss. This is not a flash for you, I'm sure. You have looked at your own life and you have seen that sometimes things that you did brought you some kind of satisfaction or some kind of happiness, but you've also seen that a great many, surprisingly many, things that we've done have brought us more suffering, and sometimes have just left us in the lurch, brought us very little satisfaction. So difficult to understand that we can put perhaps many years of effort into one single thing and have it come to nothing. Certainly I've seen that happen in my life. I know that from personal experience. Have it come to something that produces instead unhappiness. That's heartbreaking for sentient beings. We have a great deal of sadness that we carry around about that, and disillusion and disappointment, and it stays with us, and sometimes we don't know what to trust or how to go and how to move forward. And it's because we do not always understand what comprises happiness, what makes up happiness. Often in our relationships, we will engage in activities where we present ourselves in a certain way, thinking, let's say, using as an example, we present ourselves in a powerful way, thinking that that will get us approval from our loved ones or friends. And since what we are doing is to present ourselves in a certain way in order to elicit a certain response, we find that generally there's only a 50% chance that it works out, because it isn't really presenting yourself as powerful that produces happiness. So it's up in the air as to how that will work out. In the same regard, sometimes we present ourselves as being needy or whiny or just kind of wanting some sort of support. And again, that presenting oneself in a certain way does not necessarily produce happiness. So it's 50-50 chance that you're going to get any happiness from it. We have no way of understanding what our happiness or unhappiness is made of, primarily because we only have a slot of time to view, and that slot of time, when considered within the context of the great scheme of things, is extremely short. Some of us are maybe young, some of us are middle-aged, some of us are older, but whatever it is, on the outside, we've had maybe 80, 85 years to examine cause and effect relationships. And not all of the cause and effect relationships that we have ever engaged in have ripened and shown themselves clearly within that time slot of 80 years. Even if we are quite up in years and have seen much life experience, it isn't enough to understand cause and effect relationships. It is still not enough to understand how not to make mistakes. It isn't enough to understand what makes happiness. As in the case of perhaps the person that we discussed, the imaginary person that we discussed with the children. Let's say there is a situation in which suddenly someone that you know, or perhaps even have just met, is very angry at you and wants to strike out at you, and you can't understand where that's coming from. It seems to have arisen from the blue. You just don't get it. And you look at that person and you think, well, I have two choices here. I can either take it and try to to repair myself afterward, or I can fight back and be on top. Or perhaps I can take a side route of rationalizing, in such a way as to say, I am such a good person, I don't deserve this anger, and I'm going to make myself right and that person wrong, which is really pretty much what we always do. So we can take any of those routes, but will any of those routes be likely to produce the end of the situation or to alleviate suffering, really, to make us happy? It's hard to say. Probably not, though, because what we don't understand is that there is an underlying cause that must have occurred in some previous time in order for a person to come out of left field and just strike at us. There has to be a reason. We're not somehow innocent, newborn here in this universe where things which are out there can just come at us like rockets and blast us out of nowhere. It isn't really like that. According to the Buddhist teaching, everything arises from a cause. Every single thing. So if we examine our lives and we can't see the cause of our suffering in this life, perhaps as in the case of a person who's born with a handicap, where does their suffering register? How does that happen? Then we have to look at causes that must have taken place in some previous life. Now, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to roll over on our back and put our feet up in the air and say, I must deserve this. I must be a bad person. And it also isn't supposed to mean that we are supposed to just be guilty and consider that feeling guilty is enough payback. That if we walk around filled with guilt, that somehow that's the thing to do. That makes any difference at all. Because guilt doesn't make us happy and it doesn't solve the problem. And rolling over on our back and just assuming, just taking no action and thinking that karma is karma and there's nothing we can do about it, that doesn't solve the problem either. It does not pacify the cause that has arisen. The Buddha, however, gives us many different kinds of methods. You heard the children recognize some of those methods, but there are many different kinds of methods that one can engage in the Vajrayana tradition alone, and there are other traditions that the Buddha has taught. And each of those methods is considered to have within it the antidote to a certain kind of suffering. For instance, if we find ourselves in a position where someone is attacking us and we can't find the cause, we have to assume that somewhere in the deep past, and I am talking about probably before this lifetime, if you've never met the person before, somewhere in the deep past we have had some interaction with this person that has created a cause and effect relationship which has remained in its latency, in seed form, within the mind streams of both participants, both you and the attacker. And that somehow through a catalyst that we cannot know, or through just the natural occurrence of time and space, this seed has ripened. And that really is what has occurred. What is this seed? If you're being attacked, you can assume that according to the Buddhist teaching, some exacting phenomena, but in reverse, occurred in some previous time. There must have been some attack or some strong anger toward that person, probably an attack somewhere in the deep past, and that now the reverse is ripening. So that what you can understand from that is that within your mind stream, that is to say within the continuum of your consciousness, these cause and effect relationships remain, and the form that they take are like habit patterns. They are habitual tendencies. Haven't you ever been in a period in your life where it seems that you are constantly drawing fire? That you constantly draw to yourself people that don't like you or don't approve of you? That traditionally in relationships you end up in that particular situation? Or you may find that you have a long pattern of failure in some area in your lifetime. Or the reverse may be true. You may have extreme success in certain areas for long periods in your lifetime. And it seems to just be your luck your good fortune. It seems to arise from nothing. But actually, according to the Buddhist teaching, these are habitual tendencies or habit patterns. And they ripen in reverse generally. If in the past you have been exceedingly unkind, let's say, and uncaring about others, it may very well ripen that in some future lifetime, others will not approve of you and will not hold you dearly, and you will not be counted as significant or important or lovable or precious. Then how would you solve that problem? Would you solve that problem by trying to be precious? How would you try to be precious anyway? I don't know. I have to ask my daughter. She does a good job of it sometimes. Or could you try to develop a personality that you think everyone will like? Kind of develop the personality of Miss Sweetness and Light. That might work. Then somebody would surely think that you're precious. But it doesn't seem to work. You're doing your sweetness and light trip, and on the inside you're saying, love me, love me, love me. But you're doing your sweetness and light trip, and nobody seems to be taking it in. Instead, it seems to be happening just as always. And we don't understand. Well, if we could look at the deeper reasoning, we would understand that in the deep past, we've been something of a booger. And we have been unkind, we haven't been particularly generous, we haven't been particularly supportive of others, we haven't been strong in the way that reaches out to others and actually enables them and helps them and empowers them to be strong. We haven't done much for others, and that's what's ripening now. Nobody wants to do much for us. So that being the case, what is the method? Rather than trying to be precious or act in a certain way that you think is going to make everybody love you, while inside you're still a booger, what would be much more beneficial is to put yourself on a program of remedial generosity, remedial kindness. And of course, Lord Buddha teaches us that we can do what we can to benefit others. That we can be kind to others, be generous to others, be supportive to others, put ourselves out, go out of our way to help others. All others, not just the ones we want to have love us so that we continue being precious, but all others. We can adopt a new modality, and therefore what would happen is that we would develop a new habit pattern, a habit pattern that would ripen, if not now, then soon enough. Soon in the future. Or we can, in the Vajrayana tradition, we can actually begin to learn and accomplish practices and become quite good at them and practice extensively and dedicate the virtue and merit of that practice to any that we have ever had or will ever have any connection with. And of course to all sentient beings in general, which is kind of an ultimate generosity, an ultimate meaningful quality to one's life. And of course, eventually, that will ripen, and it will ripen in such a way that others are naturally drawn to you, that they see your inherent goodness. They hold you very dearly. They hold you in a very precious way. And they are drawn to whatever method you have to give to them, to offer them as nourishment. Generally, you'll find that your life will be easier, probably more prosperous. Things kind of slip into track for you. And it isn't because you're any more fortunate than anyone else, really. It's because somewhere in the past you have developed a particular habit pattern or habitual tendency that now is ripening as the appearance of goodness and ease and kindness and lovingness. That habit has already been established. But that leaves us in a very uncomfortable position, and that uncomfortable position is that each one of us has to take responsibility for what we see of our lives now. Lord Buddha said, you want to know what you were in your past life? I'm sure he didn't say it like that, I'm paraphrasing. You want to know? No. He didn't come from Brooklyn, I do. You want to know what happened in your past life? Then don't go to a psychic. Don't go to a clairvoyant. Look in the mirror. See what you are now. What do you look like? Do you know that your body actually reflects something of your qualities? That your mind, the way that you perceive things now, reflects your deepest habitual tendencies. Some people feel constantly persecuted. And it's because they have the habitual tendency of persecution. Some people constantly feel embittered. And it's because they have the habitual tendency of demonstrating bitterness toward others. It's not easy, you know? It's so much easier. We are used to taking a pill and having it be made better. You know, I'm tense. Let me take a tranquilizer. Let me not take any responsibility for what's in my mind stream. Or I'm unhappy. Let me leave this situation and go find something else. The problem when you do that is that you have to bring yourself with you. You know, you can't leave. If you could just leave yourself in front of the mirror and walk off, maybe you could think of a solution. But we're in a society that looks at, you know, 30-minute sitcoms, and we think that somehow things can be resolved within a 30-minute time period. We just have very little understanding and very little capacity to take any responsibility. We keep thinking that if we just do something quick, that something will change and we'll be able to work it out. And mostly we're geared toward blaming others for our misfortune. It's my spouse's fault, or it's my parents' fault, or it's the people around me, they don't treat me well. You know, whatever. We like to take that responsibility and put it into someone else's hands. Well, if you do that, there's only one real problem with doing that. First of all, you will increase your suffering. Because the more you blame and judge others, the more you have the habitual tendency of blame and judgment, and the more in some future time you will appear in such a way that others do not take you seriously. They just blame and judge you. You never get happy that way. And the other thing is that if you don't take responsibility for what's within your mind stream and learn how to antidote that, you are not going to see the end of your problem. At least not at any time soon. I suppose eventually the problem or the habit will wear itself out. But what if that took 10 or 20 lifetimes? What if it took 100 lifetimes? Are you willing to pay that price? Are you willing to experience angry and war-like conditions for so many uncountable lifetimes rather than isolate and antidote the habitual tendency of hatred within your own mind stream? Well, let's look at, for a moment, take this out of the realm of personal experience and look at the situation in the Mideast. Don't you think that what's really happening there is that we now have a conglomerate of people that can come together due to the force of their karma, due to the winds of their karma, and come together in this way, that basically they have all put the blame in someone else's backyard. And all of them are unwilling to experience the content of their own mind stream, to look at it squarely and responsibly, and then ultimately to accept and practice the antidote. Well, of course, all of you say, your perspective is not very worldly. We can't exactly have everybody sit down and meditate. Well, you're right. It's come to a position now where it's greatly escalated. And it's not so simple as our being able to take responsibility for our own karma. Now we have people that are in deadlock situations, up against tremendous obstacles. And the thing is snowballed because it's happening in a communal kind of situation. There's a community of people that are acting in a certain way. It's a collective fight. So, I mean, how can this little antidote that I've just talked about possibly have any effect? Well, the way is this, that we have both personal, which is individual, and collective karma. There is a blending repeating of karmic pattern that results in something that is like collective karma. You can see that actually in relationships as well. Have you ever noticed that in a relationship, one person will act this way, and another person will act that way, and they'll get together and act like two different people? Isn't that funny how that happens? Have you ever been in a relationship where the person literally makes you nuts? Oh, you've all been in relationships like that. Think about your mom and dad, at least. But anyway, situations where, the relationships make you nuts. They just make you nuts. And literally, there's something to that. You may be a perfectly sane and human person, but you get around a certain person, and the interaction or the collective karma of that relationship makes you grow fangs. And you begin to drool, and other people look at you and go, oh, what's that? And that happens. That actually happens. And there are cases where you separate yourself from that relationship in order to be normal again. These things happen. It's like that in countries as well. We have a collective karma together to be in this country together and to have the same experience, the same cultural input, the same things that we do and see and act like and taste and have in common. In order to have that similarity of experience, we have to have collective karma. And as a country, we act toward other countries, and that creates a karma collectively for that country, which each of us draws on. So we are really connected with and responsible for what our country does. And if there were different individuals in that country, the collective karma of that country would be different. So it's like that. Now there is a collective karma, and actually, as for planet Earth, there is a collective karma. There is a collective experience that we all share in. And each one of us contributes our individual karmic patterns to the whole. It's like mixing milk with water. We just keep pouring it into the pot, and it changes the depth and intensity of the collective experience. Each of our cause and effect relationships, the content of our mind streams, go into play and engage somehow and are active in the collective whole of the world's cause and effect experience and the world's habitual tendencies. We're not separate from that. So that still leaves us with the problem, even if we choose to look in the mirror and take responsibility for the content of our own mind streams, what in the world are we going to do with the people in the Mideast? I mean, how can we really affect them? They're not going to sit down and meditate. You know they're not going to sit down and meditate. Can you see suggesting it to some of the main figures there? Ha! Good luck. I don't think we can get Bush to do it. Do you think you can get Bush to do it? No. I don't think so either. But we have still a responsibility. Now, we are citizens of the earth. We are definitely participants here. And within our own mind streams, because we are sentient beings, are hatred, greed, and ignorance. If we can experience war, in my lifetime I haven't directly experienced war, but I was alive during Vietnam. Most of us were alive during some kind of warlike experience. That tells us that within our mind streams we have the karma of war. It's in there, and it can happen. There's no question. If you think that it will never happen to you, you're deluded. That's crazy. And some of us here have gone to war. Some of us have experienced it directly and watched it change our minds and impact us in ways that affect our whole lives. So each of us has that. Now what we have the option to do at this point is to take responsibility for the three root poisons, as Lord Buddha calls them, that are within our mind stream now. Hatred, greed or desire or grasping, and ignorance. In this case, ignorance is not lack of education, because here in Potomac we can say, oh, we're all educated, so I don't have any ignorance. Well, that's not true. According to the Buddha, ignorance is actually the lack of the ability to perceive and taste one's own primordial wisdom nature, that nature which is emptiness. And we don't have that capacity, or we would be Buddhas. That capacity is not ripened. So It's not that it's not there in seed form, but that it's not ripened. So we have hatred, greed, and ignorance within our mind streams. Now supposing each one of us were to take vows, let's say vows of personal responsibility. Supposing each one of us were to say, let's go on from here and really pacify, really annihilate this hatred, greed, and ignorance within the mind stream. As an antidote to hatred, let's engage in consistent, constant generosity. On all different levels. On an ordinary level, we can, like if we see people that are hungry, we can give them food. If we see people that are needy, we can try to help them unless it perpetuates their suffering to be allowed to be weak in that way. But for the most part, we can try to be kind in an ordinary human way. Then we can go further. We can learn to do some meditation or practice that is virtuous, and we can actually meditate or practice for the sake of others and accumulate virtuous activity for their sake. Actually change our lives into a vehicle by which these kindnesses would be contributed to the general pool of well-being. Let's say that we take a vow like that, and let's say as concerns desire or grasping, let's say that, again, we engage in generosity, which means that we don't hold things to ourselves, but rather we are kind and generous and free-flowing in our time and our energies. And let's say also that we examine the different pitfalls that we have in our lives, and we see where our strongest desire is. Do we desire to be beautiful or rich or loved, or do we desire to be a certain way so the people will respond to us in a certain way? And let's say we isolate these things. Everybody's got them. Yeah, even you tough guys. You guys that think that you have no needs, like John Wayne used to be. You know, kind of like that. That's baloney. You're as needy as anyone else. And so you better figure out what they are. Isolate them. What are they? Guys are looking really uncomfortable right now. They were smiling until I said that. Call a guy needy and watch them walk out the door. Sorry. Anyway, we should take responsibility and look at, what it is that is our desire. What it is. Do we need to be approved of? Lots of people need that. Do we need, what is it? And let's learn to pacify that. Let's learn to pacify that by actually, instead of concentrating in a self-absorbed way on our own neediness and grasping, instead, let's engage in filling the needs, in sponsoring, in supporting, and caring for others. Drinking the nectar, actually, of that generosity. Then let's look at ignorance. If we have the karma of ignorance, if that is within our mind stream, if we cannot recognize our own nature and therefore remain compulsively fixated on the ego self and all of its needs, and also on phenomena as defining self, and our own feelings and our own lusts and desires and things like that as defining ourself, that is a clear indication of our ignorance and our own inability to view our own primordial wisdom nature. So the antidote to that, of course, would be to learn to meditate effectively on the empty luminosity, the primordial wisdom nature that is our nature. Now, if each of us took responsibility and vows, if you will, to really ace this and handle this in such a way as to, make some change within the content of our mind streams, actually, we would be making change in the collective consciousness of Earth, too. Part of Earth's problem is that we are warlike because there's not a whole lot of enlightenment here. And if we were to contribute through our own personal experience, it would begin to change the collective consciousness, if you will, or the collective karma or mind stream of the Earth. And it's effective, and actually, at this point, it's the only thing that will work. Because other solutions, either diplomatic or monetary, have not and will not. Not ultimately. So, we can do that. And furthermore, we can engage, and particularly in this Vajrayana path, we have the technology that one can engage in where one can do practices and recitation of mantra associated with visualization and to make different kinds of offerings. Puja, this is called, this meditational practice is called puja. We can do puja that accumulates a tremendous amount of merit, more than any one person can accumulate through ordinary human means. So we can accumulate tremendous amount of merit and just dump it into the mind stream of the collective earth. Constantly creating puja, constantly creating vast amounts, storehouses of merit, and then contributing it to the well-being of earth is very different from what's actually happening in the Mideast, where people are being selfish and self-absorbed and self-righteous and warlike and contributing that to the mind stream of planet Earth. So we're making a counterbalance. It's an antidote. And you have not only the right, but I think the responsibility to contribute to something like that. After all, you live here. And you play your piece in it. What we are seeing when we see war is a reflection of our own hatred. It's not different from our hatred. What we see when we see starvation is a reflection of our own desire. It's not different. And what we see when we see big egos run the world in ways that kill people, that's a reflection of our own ignorance. It's not different. So we have the choice now to live a greater life, a life that steps up into a higher octave, out of the confusion of constantly trying to be happy and only hitting it maybe, at best, 50% of the time. And being involved in that rigmarole, we can step up onto a higher plane with a more, if you will, universal perspective, and to be an active participant in world citizenship. At the same time and in the same regard, we will also be purifying our own mind streams, and through that act of generosity and through that commitment and vow-taking to make things better, through that kind of practice, one actually moves closer to enlightenment. In closing, in the Vajrayana tradition, which is part of the Mahayana tradition, it is obscene to us to practice only for our own sake, to achieve enlightenment for our own sake. It simply is not done. One is not a Mahayana practitioner if one does that. One is not a Vajrayana practitioner if one does that. We consider that something close to an obscenity. If one does that, one will never achieve full enlightenment. The systems that cause one to simply meditate and not to engage in outright active, compassionate activity, according to the Buddhist teachings, these do not really produce the ultimate result. But if you engage in what we've discussed this morning, the ultimate result will come to pass. And as a side benefit, you will realize your own Buddha nature and awaken to that nature and be of real benefit to the world. Real benefit. So please consider all of these things when you consider how you should approach the problems in the world. What should you do? How should you think of it? How should you critique it? How should you be so smart about it? Go look in the mirror. That's the best way to start. Be smart about you. And really get busy, get to work. That's how to do it. So thank you very much.
So again, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that was helpful and you learned something. I did, always. And just to let you know, there's also, we do this twice a week, so Sunday mornings at 11, in addition to the Wednesday evenings at 7:30, we show pre-recorded teachings of Jetsunma. They're also archived on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. And so you're welcome to go there and see the ones you haven't seen and so forth. So let's see, we do a meditation as well on Saturdays and Sundays at 10 a.m., also on YouTube. And in the evenings, we do something on Facebook Live, which is a condensed, very short Medicine Buddha practice at 7 p.m. It's done mostly in English, and it's a wonderful time to connect with other people who have needs, so you can think of others and to get your wishes out there and get some help with yours, and it all kind of goes around and comes around and works out very well. But it's beautiful, and Jetsunma created that at the beginning of the COVID situation to give people a way to deal with it, to deal with their grief, and to make some strong prayers that could really help. We've also got food offering, soak offering ceremony, which is like a feast offering, and it gathers a ton of merit. She was talking about merit and how you could take it and then offer it to pacify the situation. And in this case, this is what we do every day. We have Monday through Friday at 5:30, Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 2. All of these are on Zoom. And to find out where they go, you can go on tara.org on the page that, let's see, I think it's on the thing here. Just go on tara.org where it says meditate, pray, study. Just drop down to the first one, which is webcasts and calendar. When you see the event on the calendar that you're interested in, just click on it and it will open up and give you the location, where to go, how to get in, and what the practice is, so that you can join in with us, and we'd love to have you. That's our kind of regular schedule, and so we hope to be seeing you if you have a chance online, but also we are open on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for people to come and visit inside the temple room. This is our process of opening up after the lockdown of the pandemic, and we're really happy to see people coming in, believe me. So come and join us inside if you're here on the weekends, if you're in the area. And if the times don't work for you, the outside is also open always, dawn to dusk, every day. We don't keep it open at night. We don't want you falling into a ravine and not being able to get out. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it. But we really love having you here. We hope you enjoy the grounds, the stupas, the statues, just the beautiful ambiance, the energy, the trails, and we've got some lovely animals that love being your friend. Geese. Do we have geese? Yes. Losing my mind here. Chickens, and turkeys, and so on. Pigs. Who knows? Never know what you'll find here. But all of it's friendly, so we're glad to have you come. And until next time, have a wonderful week, and hope it's all good for you, and you stay well. Thanks.